How's it going, everyone? Yosef back here with another video, and I hope you're having an amazing week so far. Today, you join me back in my Golf R because we are going to go for a drive. And the reason for that is I want to talk about a controversial topic, and that is the electric vehicle market dead? Now, there are a lot of important opinions about this, and today I'm going to share mine because you see a lot of crazy headlines out there like, it's dying, no one's buying electric vehicles, they're just piling up on lots, it's all doom and gloom. But is it true? Today, we are going to find out. But before I get into the video, if you are new to the channel, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Yosef. I happen to be a car enthusiast with 3 kids, and I used to sell cars in the past. So if you're interested in my perspective, please consider subscribing. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. Okay, now on with the video. Okay, let's go for our drive. So to kick things off, I want to talk about this topic in 2 different parts. One, I want to give you sort of an objective overview of what's going on in the electric vehicle market. And then the second is going to be my personal opinion about my situation and what I would do if it was my money. So this way you get a little bit of a balance between both sides of the coin. Now, I think there's one really important thing that we need to sort of be aware of when we have this conversation, and that is we as people generally are prone to enjoying these crazy, controversial headlines, the things that instill fear in us and sort of build that anxiety. And that is, we listen to the news and we watch the headlines and you see all these things about the world is falling apart, everything is chaos. Those are the things that generally attract our attention. It's interesting, it's captivating. Even if we know it's not true, in the back of our mind, we're like, ooh, what if it is true? Maybe there's something I don't know about or haven't thought about. Maybe I should read the article to find out. And that's the stuff that the media loves to send out because they know that it's going to grab headlines. They know it's going to make people sort of scared. And that anxiety is what they thrive off of. So when it comes to the electric vehicle market, all we see is news about how it's crashing. Nobody's buying electric cars anymore. That hype is over. Nobody wants them. They're terrible. They're not as exciting as people had hoped, and dealers are stuck with thousands of vehicles on their lots and they can't move them, and production is going crazy, and there's all these things that we see. But it's very, very misleading, and I'll tell you why. Because when you look at the electric vehicle market, people are still buying electric cars. And just because they may not be selling as much as they were a couple years ago doesn't mean that it's over. And when people think about this stuff, they always think about it in terms of black and white. Either it's good or it's bad, or we should like them or we should hate them. There's no middle ground. Everyone's always so consumed with the fact that you have to take one side of the coin as your opinion, and there is no budging. You can't go to the other side. And I think first off, that is a very dangerous way to think about life, because life is not black and white. There are pros and cons to everything, and you can really like something, you can really not like something, but that doesn't mean that you're completely opposed to it. And everything has its balance of why you may want to do it or not, or why you may want to buy something or not, and that's based on a lot of different factors and criteria, and some of those things, again, are going to be positive and some of them are going to be negative. But it's important for you to weigh those things and understand the balance of it so that you can make an informed and educated decision. And all these crazy headlines out there that are telling us all doom and gloom, and we've seen that before with the stock market and with politics, and I'm not going to go into the details of all that stuff, but we get a lot of that. People ask me all the time, Yosef, is buying an electric vehicle the right decision? Are electric cars good? And the answer is, well, it really depends. It's not just a black and white answer. It's not something I can just tell you and it's a blanket statement that'll work for everybody, because it won't. Everybody's situation is different, their needs are different, and you need to weigh and balance reasons around why you might want to get an electric vehicle and why it makes sense for you or not. So let's unpack this a little bit. Let's take a look at what's been going on with the electric vehicle market. Over COVID, everyone went crazy. Electric vehicle sales and production, it sort of went through the roof. People were all of a sudden interested and excited about these electric vehicles. It seemed like a new and exciting era, and it was great because nobody had money to spend on other things, so they wanted to spend money on cars, and this was the latest tech. And it was very exciting. People loved buying electric vehicles. But it hasn't stopped. The love for electric vehicles is still here. But you see headlines around manufacturers slowing down their electric vehicle production, and a lot of the manufacturers are saying, well, we're not going to produce as many, or we may change our roadmap around what types of electric vehicles we're going to make and how many and how we're going to produce them and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean that they're stopping. Now, here's the thing that we have to understand. The growth in sales for electric vehicles has absolutely slowed down in the last few years. But that's the growth in electric vehicle sales. If you think about it in terms of a line chart and you see the line going all the way up, that line is leveling off a little bit. It's not shooting straight up like it was before. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is totally normal for any new technology. There are always early adopters. There are always people who are going to jump on the bandwagon and say, oh, this is really cool. We had that with everything, every piece of technology that you can possibly think of. And then over time, those early adopters say, okay, I've done it, I've experienced it, and now it's time to move on. Or maybe I'm going to do it, but how much more can I consume that? And the normal public sort of waits for it to become more affordable or more practical. And therefore, that mass market adoption is not going to happen for a while. And it's the same story with electric vehicles. Electric vehicles, again, started off being this craze, this excitement, and a lot of people went out and bought electric vehicles, but they were still a very small percentage of the whole global economy and market for vehicles in general. And once those early adopters got their fix for electric vehicles, you know, now all the normal people are sitting around saying, well, is it the right thing? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And I think the technology still has a long way to go to mature. It's not quite where we want it to be yet. It's not super affordable yet. And it doesn't have all the longevity and kinks sort of worked out. And so a lot of people are still holding back. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's very healthy for the economy and for the electric vehicle market to take a step back and say, okay, let's see what we really need to get out of this. You know, what's really important for us in terms of the production or development of electric vehicles and battery manufacturing and recycling and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot that goes into it that will take time to sort out. And it'll only sort itself out by people buying them, and it'll only sort itself out by people being critical of them. So we need to have both. You can't just have everyone jump in head first, buying all this stuff, and then keep that trend going forever. It's just not sustainable. So people are buying electric vehicles still. They're not buying them at the same rate as they used to, which again, we've now determined is actually a good thing. And the big question is, you know, what do you really want in terms of a next vehicle? Do you really believe in electric vehicles or do you not? And I think a lot of the auto manufacturers are really taking a hard look at that. And if you look at Toyota, for example, Toyota's barely made any electric vehicles. They made one. They had a hydrogen vehicle too, which was very cool, but that didn't go very well. They're spending most of their time and energy on plug-in hybrids and regular hybrids because they believe that's the future. And Porsche has always been very critical about that. They've come out with a few electric vehicles of their own and they've done relatively well, and they're continuing down that path, but they're not writing off internal combustion engine cars. They're also focusing on alternative fuels and different ways that we can still enjoy our internal combustion engine cars, and they're continuing to develop those in terms of their roadmap. And the same thing with pretty much every other auto manufacturer that I can think of. Nobody is writing off internal combustion engine cars completely. And a lot of manufacturers that were thinking of just going electric, they're kind of scaling back and saying, well, maybe that's not the entire solution. And I think it's really important to understand that for a moment, because there is no one solution for the auto industry. It's like people say all the time, you know, we're all different. Our situation is different. And so the cars that we want to buy are going to be different. If we were all the same and all wanted the exact same thing, you know, we'd all be wearing the same boring clothes, driving the same boring car, living in the same boring house, you know, all having 1.5 children. But that's not the case. Everybody is different, and so our needs are going to be different, which means the market has to give us a variety, give us different things to sustain and support the needs that we have as individuals. And I think that's what the auto industry is really focused on right now, figuring out what are the needs of people, what do people care about, what do they really want to buy. And if you think about it, there won't be one solution. I don't think you can draw a clean slate and say only electric vehicles by the end of 2030 or 2035, or only internal combustion engine cars. We need that variety. And I think now manufacturers are really taking the time to invest in looking at different options for the future so that we can have that variety, so that we can get the vehicles that we really want and care about. And for those that want the variety and different experiences, they'll be able to do that. They'll have the option. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of electric vehicles, again, at a broad scale, and then I'll tell you my opinion about this. So on the whole, if you take a look at the benefits of electric vehicles, they are great. A lot of people hate on them, but to be honest with you, they make a lot of sense, and they make a lot of sense for certain types of vehicles. Now, there are a lot of people who are fed up with paying for gas, and obviously that's going to be one big benefit to buying electric vehicles. You never have to stop at a gas station and fill up again. And if you have a charger at home, if you can fit one of those high performance electric chargers at home, it's great. Life's amazing. You have the ability to drive and keep your car charged overnight and never have to really worry about it. That range anxiety doesn't exist if you're not taking really long road trips. And for probably 80% of the population, that would be more than enough. It's sufficient. They don't need to drive crazy distances. They don't need to have to worry about range anxiety because it's not important. They're not taking, crazy long trips for the most part, and it fits most people's lifestyle. And if you think about it too, if you have two vehicles and one of them's electric, you're sort of having the best of both worlds because you get to do all the city driving and the close proximity driving with your electric vehicle and never pay gas. And for the longer road trips, you have obviously an internal combustion engine car. So range anxiety, not really a huge deal right now. And the other big consideration that I think is very positive about electric vehicles is they're way more spacious. If you have an internal combustion engine car, you've got a big engine in the front, you've got a transmission tunnel or a differential or a drivetrain that goes through the vehicle and takes up all this room. You've got all these mechanical components that are causing trouble potentially as they wear down and take up space. And when you have an electric vehicle, you don't have to worry about that stuff. Mechanically, they're very simple. You've got these little motors on each wheel, or maybe you have one for all four, or one for just the front, or three of them split up across. And they require very little maintenance. It's simple. And so it doesn't cost you a lot to maintain. You don't have oil changes and mechanical problems that you have to deal with. It just makes life easy. The only thing you really have to worry about is, do you use your brakes often enough, because the regenerative braking is so good. But otherwise, the cabins are a lot more spacious. There's more storage in the vehicles, and they are so much quieter than driving around in a regular internal combustion engine car. And I think one of the other big benefits too is that you get really nice, smooth power. The driving experience is phenomenal if you're somebody that just wants a relaxing, easy to drive vehicle. Regular internal combustion engine cars, they require more effort. There's more happening. There's different gears that are changing, and it just, you require both feet to drive or both pedals to drive, depending on the type of internal combustion engine car that you have, right? I have a manual car and I need both feet to drive it. It requires a little more effort. And most of these electric cars are very simple to drive. You can use the one pedal driving, and it's a very relaxing and calming experience. And the tech is typically better because, that's really what you're buying. You're buying technology. You're not really buying a vehicle. And ones that are built from the ground up as electric vehicles, they function really, really well. Everything's integrated exactly the way that you would expect it to be. And so there's a lot of really great benefit to buying an electric car. Okay, so that aside, let's talk about the drawbacks. The big drawbacks that I can think of for electric vehicles are that they're still very expensive relative to their internal combustion engine car counterparts. Now that gap in terms of expense is going down because the production is getting better, the technology with batteries is getting better, and I think overall there are great incentives and interest rates and things like that that are making it a lot more affordable to buy electric vehicles relative to internal combustion engine cars. So that's great, but they still are more expensive generally speaking. The other thing that you have to think about is depreciation. And this is a huge one. And I've talked a little bit about this in another video in the past, but depreciation is something that not everybody really thinks about and has a huge impact on the total cost of ownership of a vehicle. And depreciation is so much greater on electric vehicles than on regular internal combustion engine cars because, their future is unknown. Who knows if driving an electric vehicle for 10 years will still be reliable, if the car will still work. And nobody wants to take that chance. So when you go looking on the used market for them, people are concerned. And so that's a big factor. You're worried that you spend $100,000 or $120,000 on your electric vehicle or $80,000, and then after a couple years, it's down 50, 60%, as opposed to maybe the 30% that a regular car would be down. That's a lot to swallow. So there's that. And there's also the reliability concerns. I think people genuinely are worried about what happens in the winter when I charge up my car. Will it work? Will it charge properly? How many charges before I start losing power or before I stop being able to fill it up all the way? And what are some of the other things that I need to worry about? If I get into an accident, am I going to write off my electric vehicle? What happens if one of the cells goes bad? Do I need to replace the entire battery pack? That could cost me $20,000, $30,000. There are a lot of reliability concerns and issues with electric vehicles that you need to consider. The other thing that a lot of people are afraid of is if I get into an accident, is it just going to burst into flames and will fire crews be able to put it out because it's not a regular fire, it's an electrical fire? That is a very real concern. So there are a lot of things that factor in on the positive side and the negative side with electric vehicles, and I think it's important to consider all of those things. Again, we still don't have the infrastructure set up in a very widespread way that allows us to charge wherever we are in the same way that we have regular gas stations. And it takes a lot longer to charge your electric vehicle. You can't just pull up to an electric charger and charge your car in 5 minutes. There's no splash and dash and away you go. It takes a good few hours or 45 minutes if you want to do a very quick charge. And that's a real challenge. There's also the capacity of these electric charge stations. You go to charge stations and they're not always available. You plan your trip and you know exactly what you want to do, where you want to go, and you get to the charge stations and they're full. That's a very real challenge. So I think it's just important to understand, again, all of the pros and cons about the electric vehicle industry, and those are all things that are being worked on in a positive way and in a negative way to help make it more adoptable for the mass market. And until those hurdles get sort of overcome, it's going to take a bit more time for the mass adoption. And one other little caveat that no one really talks about, the electric grid, I don't care where you live, if you're in Canada, the US, in Europe, Asia, Australia, wherever it is that you live, in Africa, the electric power grid cannot sustain all the electric vehicles if we were all to get one tomorrow. And that's an important thing to be aware of. Countries, governments really have to think about how they build up the electric power infrastructure to power all these electric vehicles. So even if everyone did it, we wouldn't be able to sustain it. So it's actually great that the market is slowing down a little bit to allow countries to prepare for this. So here's my personal take. Okay, we've talked about in general what's going on with all the doom and gloom news that we hear, but we also talked about the pros and cons of electric vehicles. Here's now my perspective on what I think for myself, what I would do in terms of buying another vehicle. Me personally, and again, full disclosure, this is not what's good for you, this is not what's good for everyone, this is for me personally in my life. I would not buy an electric vehicle right now. The reason being, the technology is advancing so quickly. Battery technology is moving at a rate that's unbelievable. Every year you hear stories of how batteries can store more power, they can charge faster, they can give you better speeds. There are so many things that allow the batteries to be better and they're more reliable, and that's great. But I don't want to be the test dummy right now for that. I don't want to buy it and then hope that everything is going to be great with my car in 5-10 years down the road and that it won't be completely obsolete by tomorrow, the day after I drive it off the lot. And for me, that's a big consideration. I also love the way internal combustion engine cars drive. I happen to really love the sound, the experience. I like the gears changing. I like feeling the revs building up. I like that. I don't need the quiet, comfortable car that is going to be super luxurious and do the one pedal driving, and I don't do really big road trips. So for me, it's not an issue. I really love the car that I have, and I want to hold on to it for a long time. So for me and my lifestyle, I just don't believe it's the right time for buying an electric vehicle. And to be honest with you, I can't afford the depreciation. You know, it's a big deal. I don't want to lose $40,000, $50,000 in a couple years on an electric vehicle, even if there is good incentive from the government to buy one. And for those reasons, I personally would not buy an electric vehicle. But again, that doesn't mean it's not the right decision for you. And I hope that you take away from this video, not that, oh my God, Yosef's such an anti-electric vehicle person, or he's, just hating on people who have electric cars, because that's not true. I think they're great, and they absolutely serve a purpose, and it's so important that we have it so that we have the variety, so that we can think about alternative ways that we can drive vehicles, power them, and push the market forward, and ultimately have, again, the ability to choose how we want to buy cars and what types of vehicles suit our lifestyle. But I think it's really important to know the benefits and the drawbacks, and not to be carried away with the news, and not to feel bad about what we bought. And I think people get carried away with all these things. Don't feel bad about what you bought just because of politics or the news or what other people think of you. You should go into purchasing your vehicle with all the right decision in your mind, knowing that you've done all of your homework, all of your research, and you know exactly what it's going to bring to you, the value, the challenges, so you're going in with eyes wide open, and that you're satisfied with your purchase. That, at the end of the day, is the most important part. And if you're happy, it doesn't matter what other people think. And I think it's a really important lesson in life. We're always hearing bad things, and it's important for us to understand, is that really true? Is it not? Does it affect my life in the way I think it does? Am I satisfied with what I'm doing? And if you're happy, let the haters hate. Doesn't matter. There's too much hate going on in the world anyways. I'm going to stop that there because I can go on forever, but I hope this video was helpful. I've had a lot of people ask me recently what my thoughts are on the electric vehicle market, and just in general, should they buy an electric car? And I think it's a very good question, and I think that answer is going to be really dependent on, again, your situation. So I hope I've given you a lot of food for thought. I hope this helps you with your considerations of what may be a good decision for you versus not in terms of buying an electric vehicle. And I hope this helps provide a little insight to those people who maybe are less educated about the electric vehicle industry and think that it's either the best thing in the world or the worst thing in the world. There are a lot of things that go into it, and it's not all black and white. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch the video. I really appreciate it. And for those of you that have subscribed already, I am so grateful to you for your support. I think only about 2% of the people watching my videos are subscribed. So if those other 98% are watching, please subscribe. It makes a huge difference for me, and it allows me to continue making really awesome videos, and opens up many opportunities for me to get access to vehicles that you want me to review. So thank you again. Really appreciate it. Have an amazing rest of your week, and I'll catch you again in the next video.